have a great session. The session today, of course, is on sustainable and resilient cities. Some of you may have had the opportunity to participate yesterday in the breakout session, which was a very, very good session. We had a lot of interesting discussion, and I hope that that's continued today. I'll take a moment. Of course, first, my name is Scott Walczak. I work with UNECE, helping out with the PPP program. And I may ask maybe Maria if we could go in this direction. Take a moment, introduce yourself, who you're here on behalf of, and maybe your experience. I'm going to throw one interesting twist into this conversation. I would also ask for you to share maybe one experience that you've had living in a city. And this is not a PPP. I want us to focus on the fact that we're talking about living environments where people live and carry on their lives. So maybe you could share one of your experiences in a city before we get going into the substantive elements of PPPs in cities. So, okay. Maria.
Thanks. So my name is Maria Galindo. I come from Barcelona. Currently, I work for a consulting firm. We basically advise governments in developing their smart city strategies, be it at the city level or other government layers levels. Before this, I worked for the Barcelona City Council. I know my colleague Josep at the end of the panel, who will also share the experiences from Barcelona. So basically, I love what I do. I'm passionate about cities, and I'm happy to be here sharing experiences. Shall I proceed with the...
Maybe we'll introduce, and then we'll come back, and you
okay,
can
yeah.
tell your story.
So then I'll have more time.
I'm Li Kaimeng from China International Engineering Consulting Corporation. I want to speak in Mandarin.
That's fine.
Sorry.
So I will be speaking in Chinese. This PPP forum is at its last leg now, and it is also a very important section, I would say, for my country, for sustainable development of cities. I think this is a very important topic. We have very serious challenges, and that is at this point of development of China as we develop in high speed urbanization at high speed, and we are some 50% of overall population in the world. For Western standards, if urbanization is, or rather 50% of our population is living in urban areas. Now, if it is 80%, as in one of the Western developed countries, it is a huge number of increase of population in living in city areas. So 1% is already a huge amount of people in China. So this is something that we would very much want to share experience with you.
I'm the manager of the Specialist Center on PPP in Smart Sustainable Cities at ISA Business School. It's one of the top leading business schools in the world. We are one of the IC International Center of Excellence on PPP in United Nations. What we do in our center is basically we want to study good and bad cases on PPP to get good experience, knowledge to be implemented for local and regional and national governments. My background is I'm an economist, and I have been working all my life in the public sector or in the private sector, working with the public sector. And well, I will share my experience later.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Josep Ramon Ferrer. That's difficult to pronounce. Then it's Joseph. Okay. I'm the former director of a smart city in Barcelona. I'm happy to stay here with you to explain our experience to become a smart city based in the experience in Barcelona. My background is engineer, but I think that for for a smart city concept, it's not about IT, it's not about technicians, it's not about engineers, it's about city. Then I think that smart city is the future of our cities.
Maria, now your personal experience.
Okay, so I was thinking, I don't know, because I have lots of experiences. I mean, to every new city that we go to advise the government, there's so many experiences to share. But I think I'll concentrate on Panama. So we were traveling to Panama because we were advising the government there. And one of the main challenges, which is like, sounds, or at least to us, it was like amazing how Panama is like the third country where it rains the most in the world. So they have a lot of water. They are famous for the Panama Canal, so everything is water there. But only like around 40% of population in Panama have continuous access to drinking water. And then the other, like another 40%, they only have like intermittent access to drinking water, and then 20% of the population need to walk like so many kilometers to access drinking water. So I think it's one of the main challenges that are posed today in the living areas in cities. So it's about how can we ensure that every human being has access to resources and to drinking water, which is like basic need for any city, smart city, for any kind of living area really. So I think that people first, PPPs or whatever is discussed here, I think that we should always bear into account that like cities are for people, so how can we ensure the quality of life of people? How can we make the access to resources more efficient? So all that, so I'd like to share this experience.
Thank you, that was very nice. Kai-Moon.
讲到在城市的感受，就是说我首先的感
Experience
受，我到一
in
个
a city? Well, from my point of view, I would want a city to have cultural heritage, to have its idiosyncrasies, and also the public utilities are modern. That's what I would like to see. And also it has to be friendly and comfortable. And for our feelings about cities all over the world, I think there are some common concepts and common expectations for cities. Now, for China, because it is really populous and the urbanization, the rate of urbanization is very fast, and that is why in resources, water, waste management, wastewater management, environmental, all these are challenges and issues. In urbanization of China, there are three ways of development. One, we have to be because China is populous and there are so many rural population moving to the urban areas, in our process of urbanization, it has to be emphasized that not only big cities are to be developed, but also medium-sized and smaller cities have to be developed as well at different levels of development. For example, transport, there must not be over-reliance on private cars, but public transport. And in water resources, we have to develop the water resources and also wastewater treatment, and also to explore nearshore resources as well. And there are some new concepts indeed that we can explore. And also for Chinese cities, how do we protect the idiosyncrasies and characteristics of some of the cities? Some of the old parts of town, how do we develop them? That is also an issue. For urbanization, if we provide the services, housing, it's interesting and it's difficult to balance the different interests, the different expectations. It's very complicated. So for old town development or redevelopment, this is another area that we have to focus on. A third area, how do we put quality in front of quantity? For example, in China, we are developing small rural areas, small communities, science parks, industrial parks, and new zones, etc. And so through this design of community in cities, small communities, we can introduce some of the innovative and new concepts of urbanization into these areas and integrate those with the older parts of the cities, traditional parts of the cities. Those are the three ways, but there are challenges indeed.
Okay, Scott, you asked us for our experience in
Yes,
cities.
personal experience, please.
Personal experience. I think that, well, everybody has a personal experience in a city when they arrive to a new city, is that you have to move into the city. You have to know how to move. You can take a taxi, but what I like when I go to the city is to get lost and to walk there, walk around, and use the public transport. But the fact is that mobility in cities are a crucial issue. It can be positive or can be negative. You can have, if you use private transport, you're just clearly increasing all the pollution. But if you use public transport, of course, it depending on the kind of public transport, the energy they use, they always also generate pollution, but less. But the thing is that pollution, it's a clear challenge that cities have to face. And according to OECD, they say that air pollution is projected to become the world top environmental cause of premature mortality by 2050. So it's a very big issue. So my point is that I like to use public transport because I think it's part of our commitment to reduce climate change. And I had an experience here in Hong Kong, is that thanks to Pedro Neves, who's down there, I discovered the octopus car, the nice octopus car. So this car is great. It's great, not because it's just a ticket, but you can buy your coffee downstairs with this card, and you can buy in several shops. So I made a little bit of research, and I discovered that 92% of mobility in Hong Kong is or by public transport or walking. And the thing is that thanks to the transport authority in Hong Kong, the local authority decided to create this car because they knew that due to the density of population, due to the small dimension of the city, they're not able to create more highways, more roads, so they really need to improve this public transport. Now they have 22 million cards in circulation. They're not used only for transport, they're used also for as I said, for buying things. And 95% of people in Hong Kong use this card. Mm-hmm. And what the good thing, or the amazing thing is that this card has helped to achieve the lowest rate of car ownership in Hong Kong, and now they have 73 cars per 1,000 citizens. I think this experience, just getting lost in the middle of the city and then discover these octopus cars and then researching about this, proves that if you do a very clever, a very smart way of, a very smart policy in public transport, you really can improve the quality of life and reach the SDGs.
Thank you. Joseph?
Personal experience.
Yes.
Then let me share a confession. 2011, when we started this adventure of smart cities in Barcelona, okay? We had several meetings with big companies, IT companies, and our mayor say, okay, we need a smart city director. In this moment, I was the responsible of technology, then the CIO in Barcelona. Okay? And the mayor say, okay, Josep, you are in charge of the smart cities. You are the smart city director. And I believe, I don't know anything about smart cities. The mayor say, okay, but of course it's about technology, it's about sensors. Then go away. In 6 months, we understood, not me, the team, the team of the smart city and the team of the city council, and I think that with our partners in the city, with institutions, with academy, we understood it's not about IT. Yesterday we discussed and we talked with Pedro that it's about real estate, it's about urbanism, it's about health, it's about education, it's about mobility, energy, it's about city. And we understood that smart city, it's a big opportunity to transform the city in a long term. For us, we understood that smart city, it's branding, but it's a good branding to rethink the city and to implement a blueprint and a master plan for the city behind all these areas with a lot of technology, but in a holistic vision that we want to transform our city for the next 20, 25 years. And we want to achieve to become a self-sufficient city with zero emissions, with a hyper-connected metropolitan area, with a lot of new improvement of our infrastructures. And the infrastructures of the 21st century, we are talking about IT infrastructures. But insist, it's not about IT. It's how IT help us to transform our city for the next years. And in this way, I always talk about the simile of the Olympic Games. When a city wants to launch or to implement an Olympic Games, need all stakeholders working in the same way, working together for one goal. That's to implement the best Olympic Games at the moment. Okay? Then Smart City for us was this vision, that it's our new Olympic Games and we need to engage our people, volunteers, citizens, multinationals, local companies, institutions, different institutions working together, city council, regional government, central government, European Commission, all together in the same way. Then, in our experience, the smart city concept is how we can create the ecosystem that institutions, academy, companies, local foreigner companies, and of course the city council work together in the same way to build our future city. And I say always that only 25 cities in the world can deploy an Olympic Games in a century, but all cities in the world can deploy a smart city master plan for their city. And I am completely agree with Mr. Lee that it's how you can integrate the traditional parts of the city, the innovative parts of the city in the same project to become and to engage all of these parts in the same project.
All right, thank you very much. I have to pick on you, Mikhail, because I think if I were going to offer an example, I was thinking of the Optimus card or the Octopus card, because I tried to use my credit card and they wouldn't take my card, and I said, well, I have this, and I managed to buy what I needed. It's a pretty brilliant system. It does affect some transformative change in the city by using that and sort of channeling all the activity through those cards. The one example, and I think Jeffrey Hamilton would appreciate this in particular, that I was going to offer before we move into sort of our substantive part of the program, because I too have city experiences, is as a young lawyer, my first job was representing small cities in the United States. And one of the issues we ran into was the zoning and planning controls on the city. And we realized in reviewing those that they were essentially car-centered. They were focused on how many parking spaces we had, what the setbacks were off of the road, and we realized that at the time, many cities in the United States were going through a transformative period where the downtown traditional design was what was desired. So the walkable sort of, storefronts up to the curbs, people able to sort of be pedestrians again. And we realized that our zoning code did not permit us to recreate our original downtown zone. And so it took several years of zoning discussions and planning and some sort of early formative PPP types of projects between the city and local developers to sort of recreate what was the former design of our cities, and in particular to become people-centered, and that's sort of what it's all about. So let me ask you, in particular, PPPs are very long-term projects. Cities are encountering massive growth, rapid growth. What kind of challenges do you see? What kind of opportunities or just impacts are there when a city and officials engage in a PPP structure in a long-term planning process and the dynamics that a city goes through? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So first, I think that there should be a real commitment from the city side, from the government. So if this is a long-term project, a long-term PPP, then usually private companies, what they insist on is on having the commitment from the government that it's not going to change, that the strategies and the objectives and the goals are not going to change over time, and so that the private sector commitment in the city is also going to be there. I think that this is also so from the public sector, from the government. This is also a demand, but usually when a corporation commits, like they make an investment, so it's at least stronger than maybe in some governments or with some governments worldwide. So I think that's the first issue. Then second issue, I think it's about the regulations, which sometimes really limit the scope of the PPP or how the PPP can be really implemented. Because in some economies and with some regulations, there's really a limitation in terms of how you can share the risk, and also in terms of controlling, like for the overall operation, how this. So I think these are like three main issues to take into account when putting up a PPP.
说到城市 PPP， 中国目前的就是在城市投资建设里。
In China, at the moment, in the urbanization process, we use the most of the PPPs based on the NDRC's statistics. Currently, the PPPs that have been included in the data center is about 19,000. And among them, municipality building is around 8,500. This accounts to 55% of the PPP project nationwide. If you then add environmental protection project, and the figure will go even higher. In China, to promote PPP projects, we start with the cities, including the power supplies, water supplies. At the moment, in city PPPs, in terms of waste treatment, water treatment, bridge building, water supply, heat supply, ocean water, and underground management, in terms of the zoning and planning and specific towns, etc. So these are all the areas that we see PPP being used. Whilst we roll out PPP models in China, we have 20 years of experience, especially since 2002. Back then, the Ministry of Housing, they have advocated for PPP. We had the biggest confusion, which is how to combine the public interest as well as the commercial interest of urbanization. This was one of the biggest difficulties. Once we introduced PPP model, we have also brought in famous international companies, for example, Veolia from France, and Switzerland international companies, and many domestic companies also participated in the PPP projects in the urbanization process. A lot of these projects actually for commercial companies, they are participating in the provision of services for the public services. For them to pursue a commercial interest, this is, without a doubt, reasonable. So we work together to solve these issues, and we are also, we see that in situations that people fight for the town center projects but not the rural areas. And sometimes when the water price goes up and the waste treatment price goes up, the citizens were not happy. And for private sectors, when they participate, how do they maintain and protect the public interest, and how to have the public actually participate in this mechanism? This is also another issue. For the public sector, they use the traditional PPP projects, which is a traditional being led by the government. Now they have put it forward to the market. Sometimes the government, they don't want to shoulder any responsibilities anymore. They let it go, and which has caused the unsatisfaction of the public. So since 2003, during our work, we have encountered many, group incidents. So these are all issues, which means that how do we really strike a good balance and build a long-term relationship between the public and the private sector. It is not simply about the provision of capital, it is also how to perfect the management of the city. So PPP is a very difficult and a very systematic approach, to the building process of a city, and we are also working hard on it whilst
I will ask a question before asking what kind of PPPs we need. It's do we need private sector in cities? And cities, local authorities are there to provide services for citizens. The thing is that that's their purpose, and they have the workers, the budget to do that, the laws to do that. The thing is that cities in the 21st century have nothing to do from 20 years ago. Yesterday we saw the case of Shenzhen. In 20 years, Shenzhen was less than 1 million inhabitants, and now it has 11 millions. The challenges that we are facing, the global challenges that we're facing are all around the world: social, climate, environmental, demographic, economic challenges. At the end, they're local challenges. They're global, but they need local solutions. So the complexity of managing cities right now, it's huge. And if you add the global crisis, the economic global crisis that we had, cities do not have the resources, do not have the knowledge, do not have the innovation capacity to implement new solutions to face these challenges. So they really need private partners. And when you think about private partners, you have to think about PPPs, standard PPPs, PPPs as we know, as we have seen all these days, but we have to think also in a different kind of PPPs that's more related to all the digital economy, all the sharing economy, all these kinds of new economy that will be the future of the economy and will put some cities above others and will give more opportunities to the citizens. But so you really need two kinds of PPPs, the standard ones and the new ones, the more related to to digital economy. Regarding the standard PPPs, what you need, what really needs to attract private companies to be there, it's that first, at the local level, projects have to be bankable. They really need to be, there has to be a profit. And sometimes at the local level, there's not the local governments do not have the fiscal sovereignty, so the risk of break is higher. So that makes a very big risk for private companies to invest in these projects. There's two other things that what we have seen in our center and the experience we have learned, we've seen that there's a limited capacity from local authorities to design and to implement PPPs and then to after operate them. And third, there's a clear renounce from the public sector to assume part of the risk of the project. And so regarding these three things, the first one, we really need an engagement from the national government that guarantee the rating credit of local governments, of the national government that endorse local financial operation related to PPPs. But for the case of how to manage PPPs and how to assume part of the risk, local authorities have to invest in education. They really need to invest in sending their professionals to executive programs to learn how to do PPPs. Because if you need the private partner, you have to know how to work with him. Mm-hmm. And regarding these more conceptual new PPPs, regarding all these about sharing economy, digital economy, I think that we're in a very beginning phase, so we have to move on. But I would say that local authorities have to encourage this new economy. Have to put the ground, help these companies to start. Ramon knows this very well, as he was the former smart city director in Barcelona, that all this kind of new economy, they are basically startups. They're also the big companies, but you also need the small startups, and you need to help them. And maybe somebody is thinking, what I'm talking about? Where is the PPPs here? Well, the thing is that all this new economy, it's about data, it's about information. Mm-hmm. And this data, and I'm thinking about the case of Uber, okay, mm-hmm. All the taxi, all the sharing cars, and that it's a case that in a lot of cities it's very controversial, that the public authorities do not want that. Some public authorities want them, some they don't want them. All the unions don't want them. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that these companies have a huge amount of data that if you make a partnership between the local authority and the private companies, you can improve so much the public services related to mobility. Mm-hmm. So in this case, you just have to make confidence to these companies and to improve this kind of new economy.
Yes, because it's completely, because it's change of mentality. No? I think that this is a good example, the Uber, because Barcelona, it's mobile world. There are mobile world congress each year, then it's mobile world capital, and it's one of the best cities in the international rankings in the smart city, and we have forbidden Uber. That's crazy. Because it's not only what happened, it's how happen the new things in the city. And it's a change of, it's innovation a lot, but it's new, not only new economy, new social aspects, new how you introduce the new models, business models and social models in the city. Then, in our case, for us, PPPs, it's like IT. We agree that smart city is not IT. We agree that smart city is not PPP. But behind all things that happen in the city, there will be IT. I think that all things that happen in the city, behind all things, there will be PPPs. Let me put an example. Close your eyes and dream. In 15 years, the mobility of your city. I dream in the mobility in Barcelona. All vehicles, electrical vehicles. At the same time, all vehicles, self-driving vehicles. Then, pool, because it's self-driven, or you need your own car. Pool. Then, better and more public transportation. And then, more public space for the pedestrians. You said before that in the downtown of the city, only in the downtown, in a lot of neighborhoods, more public space for people and for citizens. Okay, and now open your eyes. To be possible this dream, you need the industry. And you don't only need the IT industry, you need the mobility industry, energy industry, you need all industry to achieve your goal that to be in a better city for your pedestrians and with less pollution, etc., etc., etc. Then, for me, PPPs in the smart city concept, it's not a philosophy. It's necessary to be clear that you need a clear objective and you need the industry collaborating with you. And for me, there are two concepts behind this one, that it's why spend public money if the industry can help you? And second, if you have usually PPPs are ambitious projects with different areas in the same way. Then you are breaking silos to collaborate the industry with the institutions, but at the same time, inside the institutions, breaking the silos of the different departments. Because in this way of the mobility, you have mobility, energy, environment, public space, urbanism, etc., etc., etc. Then, for me, PPPs is a magnificent tool to achieve our objective in the city that we want.
我觉得就是我回应一下这个西班牙两位朋友的意见，就是首先我会非常同意你们的观点，就是说呢，城市的可持续发展需要 PPP， 但是呢，我
Element
个人觉得
needs
我们
PPP, but at the same time, I would submit that we cannot over-rely on PPP, because at the core of PPP is about infrastructure efficiency, enhancing that efficiency. But apart from PPP, there are two other very important methods. One is that the government provides a public utility. For example, in Hong Kong, For a lot of the public utilities, it is not done through PPP, but really through the government. The Public Utilities Department of the government is very effective in providing what they need to provide in terms of services and utilities. And even without PPP, they're able to lower costs, raise productivity, raise effectiveness and efficiency. And also, as a government department or a government authority with due authorization from the government, they have sufficient flexibility, and also they have the resources. So for public utilities to be provided by public or government department, it is an effective method. In some other countries, such as Northern Europe, there are these models as well. So this is another way of providing that kind of service. And a second area is, well, to rely solely on privatization, on the market, to provide the services, and at the same time rely on the government to provide the policies, the rules, the codes, and also to work on marketized principles to provide public utility services. I think that also is highly feasible. For instance, in China, many cities are promoting shared bicycle rides to lower the need for cars, etc. Well, this is not PPP as such. It isn't, but it is a public service, a public utility. The government, on the one hand, will have to provide the regulations and also provide the impetus for and directions, and also the private sector, under that kind of environment, can, according to market principles, operate these services. So this is another way of transforming public utilities and providing public service. And then I would say that, yes, it needs private companies' input and government input. These two forces have to complement, supplement each other, and also share risks. And only then will there be sharing of the benefits. And PPP should also be built on this kind of platform. For a country such as China in its developing stage, a lot of cities are facing challenges concerning their provision of public utilities, how to make their talents, their specialities, and the resources, channel them to an innovative manner to provide good to the people. I would say that PPP is a very important method for achieving city development, but we cannot be over-reliant on PPP because the public department, that is a government, and the private sector in building long-term relationship, there will have to be a kind of game theory or a debate between the two, a kind of negotiation dialogue between the two. And in coming up with a concession contract for, let's say, 20 years, 30 years, then let's say if the government wants to change that contract over that period, it would be difficult, and therefore there is a lack of flexibility for that kind of long-term concession contracts arising out of PPP. So, and another point is that if the government itself is not operating at a high level, if it is not knowledgeable, is not skilled in negotiation with the private sector, it is not at a good position, and it also weakens a PPP as a methodology. And a further point, there are different levels of PPP. One level is PPP as a government procuring tool. Through the PPP method, it brings in a third party, a third force to build a partnership so that it is more effective for the government to achieve value for money. And there, it has to do with public spending. A lot of developing countries where the public money is hard to come by, is insufficient. A lot of services will have to be, if it is footed by public money, there is very little space and room for development. And therefore, there is this second level or second generation of PPP, which is using PPP as a force for promoting urbanization and city development. And that is how to bring in resources and funding, merge that with government capabilities, and then build a returns mechanism which is market-based. And this also has to do with the user's preparedness and ability to pay for the services. So PPP becomes a tool for economic development. So PPP becomes more powerful in that sense. But there is also an issue, and that is for this public utilities payment. Are the consumers, users willing to pay for it, and how much can they sustain the payment? So when we emphasize development, emphasize city development, these are very often the Western countries' concepts, where these Western countries are quite developed. But for developing countries, where the personal income is very low, how willing are they to pay for these utilities, for these services? There's a big question mark right there. So I would say, this is about capital. On the one hand, we were talking about the economy, developing the economy, and also economic value sustainability. What I mean is there has to be compensation for any injury to personal rights, for example. At different stages of economic development, there are different levels. What I'm saying is, for example, building a hospital, for instance, loss of life and loss of health. If the health level, if the development level is very low, or where people do not pay a lot of attention to that kind of compensation, that compensation for injury, or they're not willing to pay a lot for health, then that kind of PPP for health, for hospitals would not be viable. So what it is, at what level of development of the economy, what level of GDP is a country at, that is important. And then there is social network, history and cultural heritage. That also has to be taken into account, because community, cultural heritage very often is destroyed in urbanization. And if people do not attach value to that kind of destruction, then it is also difficult. If we say PPP is a tool for promoting economic development, and if we provide a market-based returns mechanism on top of that PPP, it may be difficult for developing countries which do not attach the same kind of value to compensation, health, etc. So it is about a deeper, emphasis or value system when we talk about PPP. So I submit that PPP is useful in developing the economy, in planning, in changing how cities are to be managed. But what I'm saying is that where the countries or cities are not at that level of development, we must not over-rely on PPP. Traditional methods, for example, the public government, the government departments providing public utilities, is still a way forward, not to over-rely on PPP as a model. We should let the experts do what the experts do best, and they can champion innovation and urbanization as well.
Well, Dr. Dr. Lee, you said a lot of things, a lot of interesting things, so I think that the session is over. No. No, I share, sorry. I share most of the points, and I also think because when Mikel was pointing at how we can create the skills and education, like, so I truly think that we must not overreact with this PPP. Like now sometimes it looks like it's a fashion. I was in Argentina 3 weeks ago, and so they really want to, since they are trying to build, the government in Argentina is trying to build trust again in the economy, so they really want to gain capital inflows in the economy. So they are now seeing like PPPs as, the ultimate response to this control on the economy and getting back trust in the economy, in the markets. But I think you're completely right. It's not that it's going to be, a PPP for everything that we want to deliver for every public service. No, we need to address first what's the challenge, what's the problem, what are the risks, and then see what's the best model to deliver the service and to generate jobs, an economy, to diversify the economy, and to act as the public sector, and then to get returns for the private sector. But I do think that it is about, I don't know if it's a matter of GDP, or I'm not sure, but we can continue to discuss this after. But I do think it is a matter of how mature both parts are. So the economy, both the economy and the government, and also the private sector, how mature the utility sector is in each of the economies, and then is every party ready to establish a PPP in the most traditional way of thinking of PPPs as sharing risks, sharing control, sharing the different mechanisms to make it work. But so in this sense, I really think that it's about the skills of the people that need to put up with the PPP and make it work. And so education and capacity building and skills building is really plays a crucial role in the success of PPPs. But thanks for sharing all that knowledge with us.
Yes. Regarding your thoughts, Dr. Lee, I totally agree that public service for sure can deliver services, and sometimes you don't need the private sector. I also agree with Maria, with Ms. Galindo, that I'm not quite sure if it's a matter of GDP or not, and because the case you said of the north of Europe, they had a very good public service done by public authorities, done with public resources, with the highest rates of taxes. So if we want, and this is a discussion we have all the time in Spain and in Catalonia, in Barcelona, we say, we want the education of Sweden, we want the transport of Sweden, we want everything from the north. I say, okay, but we don't want to pay like they pay, we don't want their taxes. That's one thing. The other thing is that I will give you an example of the evolution of these public services done only by the public partner and then with private partner. Metro from Barcelona. The metro from Barcelona, the ones that know them, compared to the figures of metro in Asia, it's just very small, okay? But for European standards, it's considered one of the best networks of urban rail of metro, with rates of punctuality and quality over 97%. And it's considered one of the best compared to Paris, compared to London, compared to the big in Madrid, there's just, I always give the same experience. It's that Barcelona is the only capital in Europe that all the train stations, all the metro stations are adapted to people that have to go with wheelchairs. It's the only one. If you go to Paris, none. If you go to Madrid, none. You go to England, to London, none. And at the same time, it's very cheap. This has been done by a public company. The public metro company, it's a consortium from the city hall, the regional area, the regional government, the metropolitan government. It's 100% public. But two things. As they have evolved in the time, now they work like a private company. The management is completely private. It's public resources, but private management. And we have a discussion, a very hot discussion in Spain, because the salaries of these managers are private sides, other wages similar to the private market, not similar to the public market. So that's a very big discussion. But they're working like a private company. And the other thing is that to make the new improvements, they need the private company. Before they didn't need it. For example, we have a ticket. It's not this. It's a floppy ticket that you can combine metro. You can combine with the bus. You can combine with train. This with tramway. Thank you. This has been done by the public authorities and the public resources. The new services now in the public transport in Barcelona are possible thanks to PPPs, and not only because there's a lack of resources, of economic resources, because there is a lack of public resources in public governments, but also because there's a lack of innovation. And you have the case of the tramway. The tramway is completely a PPP, and the octopus, again, the octopus card, we will have one. It's called T-Mobilitat, and it's a PPP, because the public authorities, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the technology, they don't have the innovation, they cannot do it. They know how to do it, they know what they want, so they plan it, they make the strategy plan, but they need the private partner to do this thing. I totally agree that depending on the maturity of the public service, depending on the maturity of the partners, of the public and the private partner, depending on the maturity of the country and of the city, you may not need the private partner. Maybe you don't need it because you have so strong public partner that it's okay, because you have it, because the country is very rich, or because you want to pay a lot of taxes, or you agree to pay a lot of taxes. But the thing is that, as I said, more and more challenges are going higher, more and more challenges are getting more and more complex. They affect directly to citizens and then to the local governments. And I don't know, maybe Scott knows because he's from the US, but I don't know a public servant structure that it's as flexible and as stimulate to innovation, to be prepared to face all these new challenges. That's not the purpose, or at least in Europe, and I would say in almost over the world, that's not the purpose for public servants. Their purpose is to guarantee that the law is accomplished, and that's their point, and that's good. But we are having so fast changing challenges. We're now living in a new world that it's completely the liquid society. We're there. Everything is changing every day. Everything, you don't know what will happen in 10 years' time. So you don't have the capacity from the public administration to be ready with these changes. And this is the private sector that will do it.
You talk about the share the risk. This is one of the key points. I think at the end, PPP is a magnific tool, but it's only a tool. It's the same that IT, when we say that smart city, it's not IT. It's the same as smart city, it's not a tool. I think that when you implement a technology, you can choose a good technology, or you can choose a bad technology. Ever is a good technology, is good technology for your goal or not. Then for me, it's the same with the PPPs. The most important is your strategy, and have very clear your goal, and after use the PPPs depending of your strategy to achieve your goal. And of course there are a lot of benefits, share the risk, you have private investment, but at the end is a tool. Somebody talk about it's possible to destroy the heritage buildings, but it's not the PPPs. It's the political leadership or the strategy of the city. And sometimes, or a lot of times, governments believe that PPPs is a tool to economical development. I think it's wrong. PPPs is a tool for improve the public services, for improve the city. The economical development is a consequence of to be in a good way and to implement in a good way the PPPs. Then I completely agree with your lecture and with your message that it's using PPPs in the good way, it's using PPPs when you need PPPs. I think that the example of Miquel, it's good. In the case of Barcelona, the transportation it's managed with a public company, in a private concept, but in a public company. But the new line that we are deploying, it's in a PPP tool. Then there are a mix. Ever the best is in the middle. Then the equilibrium is balanced with use. But for me, in this example, the most important is to have clear the strategy that what do you want.
You've actually hit on something that leads us kind of to our next question is, you see the dynamic in the U.S., not that we have all the solutions, but by any means. I suppose the one thing that the U.S. has going for it is that we have 50 states, and so we have a very chaotic process. It's like a laboratory of policy and ideas. So one state fails, everyone says, well, don't do that. Let's do what New York did, or let's do what Illinois did. So we have a little bit of experimentation built into our system. But by no means, we're figuring it out just like everyone else. One of the dynamics that you have all talked about so far, and I think would lead us to maybe the next element that I'd like to discuss, is I've actually been on projects where there has been complaint that the public sector is essentially entering a market, right? And they're subsidizing perhaps economic development in a very specific way. And then the opposite is true, that in PPPs, and we talk about economic development, that the private sector is now entering the public domain. The public service necessities, citizens' rights, and sort of what people look to their government to provide. And so I'm kind of curious about your opinions and ideas and maybe even experiences of where is that line? Like what kind of protections do we need to put in place to allow these projects to happen, to make them bankable, to have that sort of market attraction, but also respect the fact that we're providing a public service and maintaining the fact that the hospital will provide care to all people that attend. Perhaps we have a toll road in particular that I worked on that many people call Millionaire's Way because it goes to the wealthiest neighborhoods. And so is the remainder of the population subsidizing easy access to the wealthy neighborhoods? These sort of bigger policy issues. So are laws required? Are new regulations? How do we protect the public interest in these projects?
Laws are required, for sure. But I think that the most important thing when you are asking or you're deciding from the local government or from the public authority to have a private partner to deliver the public service, you don't have to forget that you still have a responsibility. You are the owner of the rights. You are the owner of you're renting the service. You're not privatizing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're forgetting your responsibility, you're privatizing the service. Then it's a market problem.
Right.
But to guarantee so you don't have to forget that you have a responsibility as an authority, as a public authority, and to do this, the key issue, the key concept on PPP is governance. You really have to have a very good governance system during the PPP. You're the boss of the project. Mm-hmm. You're taking one company. You could take 10 different companies. So it's your project. You have to be there during the bidding process. The economic theory always says that you should never do a PPP due to economic reasons, because you will pay in the future. Mm-hmm. And you will pay more than if you had the money now. So that should never be a reason to do a project, a PPP project, that you don't have the money. The fact is that it's always the first reason. That's true. Let's face it. But okay, it's true. It's a very attractive tool. You can advance. You can ask someone to advance the money for you, and then deliver the service, and then you win the elections, the next election. So that's everything. Everybody is happy. But the thing is that you have to have clear strategy. Why you're doing this? Why you're delivering this service? Do we really need this service? Do a value for money, and also a cost-benefit analysis previous to implement the PPP. Do a very correct bidding process. Mm-hmm. We have seen a lot of projects that the public authority just decide to put a very low price in the bidding process because they didn't have the money, because the financial public law said that they had to have the reservation of the money for the future. So, and the end, they were doing a very cheap project that at the end, the over costs were incredible because things cost what they cost, not what do you want them to cost. So you really need to have this very good bidding process, a very good previous planning, strategy and planning process, and during the building process and during the operation, you have to be there. Mm-hmm. You are the owner, you have to be there. Mm-hmm. Put KPIs in hospitals. You can put KPIs everywhere, in any kind of service, and with the technology now you can put in any kind. The only thing is that you have to be clear what are you giving to them, and don't forget that you are the boss. So the governance is the key issue.
Okay. 我是首先我非常赞成啊，但是我们一定讨论。
I can't agree with it more. However, when we talk about this, we need to grasp the nature of PPP, the legislation of PPP, and the design of PPP, and the building of the mechanism of PPP. It is of vital importance. However, when we consider PPP, because we hope through the PPP model, we are able to build a partnership. Therefore, we can't only think about PPP or like one party's appeal. Today, when we only consider about the public sector's appeal, we say that you should only consider about the provision of social benefits and providing a public service to satisfy the citizen. However, if you need PPP to introduce private capital into PPP projects, and for those private capital, of course, they are for profit. This is within reason. It is, not because it's a PPP project, and then you ask the private sector to drop their profit. So for PPP, we emphasize on an equal partnership, so which reflects that for PPP operation, to have a high-level PPP project, it is very complicated. It is not something that one party can do it. So for PPP, in addition, we also feel that this is something going forward. This is a direction for the building of the society, and how do we make sure and promote healthy PPP development. I think that we need to exert the influence of the UNECE, because the development of a city and the financing of a city and urbanization, and how to strike a balance between various stakeholders to promote the development of the society, environment, etc. Actually, countries around the globe, they all face the same challenge. So this is why I believe that we need to have a platform for international exchange. On one hand, I believe what the UNECE has said, to build a set of standard for international PPP, to promote the realization of the 17 SDGs. This is very smart. However, for smart cities, for the infrastructure buildings of smart cities, how to better adopt a PPP model to include that into the United Nations PPP standard and its action framework. It is very important. Therefore, the Spanish Smart City Center, it is very important that we can learn from you and your experience and your expertise. We can study how to realize our goal and our blueprint. This is very important. In addition, to promote PPP's healthy development in the building of a city, I think we need to have some good exemplary projects. For example, now China is promoting One Belt, One Road. For One Belt, One Road, we don't think this is an initiative of one country. This is an international economic cooperation.
那个集中各方面的智慧，在这样的情况下，推动一些重点的示范项目，然后让大家看到一个健康的 PPP 应该是什么样的。所以这样一个起到一个引导示范作用是非常重要的。第三个方面，实际上在如何推动城市发展这方面，在世界各国。
I hate to interrupt. We have lost our translation, it seems.
Sorry, is it now on the translation? Is it now on the translation? Let's try again. The translation. You hear the translation? Yes? Very good. And a third point, and I was saying, we should have international role models or case studies for PPP. That is to say, for the on the global basis, there should be some PPP models that we should be able to follow and refer to as case studies, as role models. if we can learn from the past successful PPP models, that is important. And another point I was trying to make is One Belt, One Road. The countries along One Belt, One Road, the Chinese initiative, we have 44 PPP projects. And in the past, we have these experience gleaned from these projects, and we should learn from them, and we should build on them as future learning. And a further point concerning One Belt, One Road. There is a very important point in One Belt, One Road, and that is to build a wisdom or a smart One Belt, One Road. And on that basis, we should have an expert platform formed under UNECE to hold regular exchange sessions among these experts, so that we can learn from each other to build a real PPP, a real and smart PPP, not to go for PPP for the sake of PPP.
Thank you. I do want to be sensitive to time. We're technically at 12:30, but I think we can get another 5 or 10 minutes if we have some further thoughts. And I do want to offer an opportunity for questions too.
Let me add only that when you did the question, you say that what's the model or what happened, what now the private sector is more close than the services that implement public sector. Okay? But I think that it's not new. That I think that in the 19th century, when the US deployed the railways, private companies are in the same in the highways in Europe. And I think that's the more, it's not because now it's a new concept. Perhaps that's new. It's that in the new world, in the new economy, there will be a lot of opportunities that the private sector help the public sector to deploy new solutions, innovative solutions. Then for me, Mr. Lee say a lot of times it's the model. I think it's the model. And it's the leadership of the public sector and the politicians. Nobody talk about the capacity of and the knowledge of the public sector. For me it's very important, because you need to agree with private sector, and then you need to have knowledge inside of the public sector to collaborate with the private sector, because it's not a relation of the client and supplier. It's not customer and provider. It's a relation of partnership. Then you need to have knowledge and capacities in both sides. Then for me it's very important. And at the same time, for me it's to be brave in the side of the public sector. To be brave to decide that we go to share the risk and we go to do projects, not only pilots. Because a lot of cities talk about I want to become a smart city and do a lot of pilots. Pilots for the private sector and the companies, it's only in the laboratory. But to become a smart city, you need to implement projects. Then for me, it's knowledge inside or capacity inside the public sector, and at the same time to be brave and to decide, share the risk with private sector to implement projects.
If you want to add one thing, yeah, please, Maria. Please.
Like really, really very, very short. I completely agree with that. I think it's about knowing each other, like knowing the other party's reason to be in a joint project. But let's not forget that ultimately a PPP is designed to meet a common interest. So for the public, for the government, it's about providing a service. Traditionally, services have been provided by the public sector in most economies. Now we are facing and we are now immersed in the economy where this is no longer a way of doing things, but instead we provide like shared, even if it's just within the market or from the public sector or then jointly. But to your initial question, I think that the government party here should really advocate for this ultimately common interest purpose of the service or the good that is being delivered with the PPP. And, but to this, I think that also we need to take into account that traditionally the public sector has not been marked by the benefit of how you deliver, the economic benefit of delivering a service, but instead to provide as a public service, universal access, etc. So I think there is also an issue in how to really meet this common interest and meeting the profits that the private sector is willing and is expecting to get from this service delivery, and then the common interest and the public service that the government needs to really ensure for the citizens.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're going to open it up for questions for a few minutes. I want to ask one quick question as we're getting the microphone circulated, and we can either answer it now or after we've done these, but I'm going to borrow something from Shrunjit Lyle. Each of you have about 10 or 20 seconds, either now or at the end, to tell us what you think are the sort of transformative projects of the future, and you maybe get to pick one apiece that you think are the next stage in PPP development. 10 seconds, but let's take some questions, and at the end you can think about that, and then we'll have you tell us your thoughts. Questions? Yeah. Yes, Raymond, I think, has a microphone, yes.
Miguel, I think, started with the question about making sure that the PPPs would help innovation or make the services being provided in a less costly and innovative manner. Now, we know from what happened in terms of the privatization, for instance, in Eastern Europe, if it's not well done, it's simply a state monopoly becomes a privatized monopoly. And it doesn't lead, if it's a monopoly, it doesn't lead to innovation. So how could we think of PPPs that they're designed in a way that it doesn't create a market failure in the sense of creating new, mini monopolies, where a company might just be comfortable milking the situation for 10 years and does not improve on the speed and effectiveness of what they were assigned and contracted to deliver. So how could we make sure that the PPPs will also engender innovation?
Okay, first we have to be clear what is innovation. And normally when we think of innovation, we think in a very fashion thing, very futurist and very revolutionary thing. It doesn't have to. Innovation can be very simple. And the thing is how to include PPP. I totally agree with you. PPP is not, does not guarantee automatically innovation, for sure. But you have the elements to innovate there. Why? Because you have a private partner, or you can invite a private partner to innovate for you, for the public authority. I'm going to give you an example that we have studied and we will publish very soon. It's the case of, there's a urban highway in Barcelona. It's called Rondas. It's a highway that goes just around, it's a circle highway. It's not a PPP, it's just a public procurement. But we have studied with the regional, with the metropolitan government, and we have advised them to make this become a PPP. And the thing is that this contract right now, the private company, its contract just to maintain the highway, okay, just to keep it clean, that when there's an accident, they just put the new elements, the new assets, whatever. And they're paid every month regularly, and if there's something, some accident, the public authority just pays for the new assets. When we analyzed this contract, we saw that there's this highway, as it's urban, you can imagine that there's a lot of tunnels because you have to, you just pass under the city. We discovered that the bill of the energy of the lights of the tunnels was not in the contract. It was paid directly by the public authority. It's like the half of the price. It's the bill of the lights. Well, it will be very easy, and we propose that to them, and they totally agree, and I hope that they will do it. That's their problem. I hope they will do it in the future contract to include the risk of, or they include the cost of the energy, of the light, of the tunnels in this contract. And this, if you put a fixed tariff, like imagine this bill is around 5 million euros, okay, per year. So instead of paying every year 5 million, 6, 4.5, whatever, depending on the consumption, put as a public administration a fixed tariff. Let's say 5 million. And the next year I will give you not 5 million, I will give you only 4.5. And the next one 4 million. And maybe I can compensate you with another thing to maintain the 5 million. But I ask you not to pay more than 5 million for the energy. What you're asking to the private company is to innovate. You're putting in the contract a way to innovate. And what they are doing right now is they're testing with a LED company to use another kind of, to use LEDs in the tunnels to save energy. So, yeah, for sure, PPPs do not guarantee innovation, but you have the set to try to innovate.
Yeah, so to some degree, if you use the right contracting method, a performance contract, you can maybe get that innovation compelled through the contract. We probably have time for one very short question because we do have the rail visit following our closing ceremony, and that's a very rigid time frame.
Yes. Mikael, I think it's great to see how PPP for Cities Center comes in and the great job you're doing. I think we have economic PPPs, the easy ones, roads, energy. Then we have more complex, hospital, schools, and then we have the very complex ones, urban PPPs. Dr. Lee, you have been giving us a lot of new ideas, and I think all of us see OBOR not just railway and ports, but also a number of cities along OBOR. And so it will be very interesting to hear from you, your vision, how you see OBOR cities being developed and how open is this platform for international players to participate on urban development, smart cities in China and across OBOR. So your vision about this would be, I believe, very interesting for all of us. Thank you.
就实际上对于我们来说，在“一带一路”这样的一个合作的倡议下，
About One Road Initiative, how to use PPP model to have the projects being established. This is the key that we pay attention to. For One Belt, One Road projects, what we say is that we hope through this initiative, we have an international framework. So they are not the same as the traditional foreign aid model that China had been adopting. This is based on the market-driven perspective. So on one hand, the Chinese government is saying that at the promotion of international investment, you can see whether it is foreign aid funding or National Development Bank or the Exim Bank, we can see that through the AIIB and the Silk Road Fund. We also have another new development bank. We hope China's fund can work for the benefit of the infrastructure of countries around the world. But when we talk about the specific projects, perhaps we cannot be very general about what PPP is. What is the sort of return that, what the sort of benefit that they will have on infrastructure, on economy? Those are very specific questions that we need to answer. And for PPP projects, the likely result is that if it doesn't run well, the risk, will be even higher than traditional projects. As an expert has said, for example, Eastern Europe in the market economy process, from a scholar's point of view, people say that it will improve efficiency and lower cost. However, during this process, if a problem occurs, your expected result will not happen, and which may even bring even bigger issues. So we need to strike a balance between all aspects, and we need to analyze these cases, on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have to probably wrap it unless, do we have time for one more question? I'm looking, looks like Alekos, please.
Well, just a short comment on the previous question of monopoly. Okay, there are ways to avoid private monopoly by inserting in the concession agreement some provisions with which either we regulate fares or we tell the concessionaires that in order to modify any fares, they need the consent of the government. Now, about innovation, a private company has always other motives to innovate because they are thinking of their profit. And usually, a private company manages a service much more efficiently than the government. So I believe that this is not a reason why to avoid a PPP. For an urban development. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Unfortunately, I do see a couple other hands, but we have to wrap our session. I personally want to thank all of the panelists for all of your insight into smart cities, and might I ask we give them collectively our thanks. Of course, I would ask that they also make themselves available should people have further questions or would like to discuss a little further after our closing ceremonies. But let's take just a moment here and we can transition into our closing. Thank you.